Isaac walked through the fields at sunset, the golden hues of the sky reflecting his quiet hope. He knew that God had prepared something special for him, a promise that was about to be fulfilled. As he watched the horizon, his thoughts turned to the wife he had never met, but whom his heart already longed for. From afar, a caravan was approaching. Rebekah was on her way, leaving behind her home, her family, and everything she knew. She followed confidently, her heart full of courage and faith. Everything in her journey up until now had been an act of trusting something greater, a leap into the unknown with the assurance that God was guiding her. And now their destinies were about to intertwine in a story written by the Creator himself, a story of love, faith, and purpose. Soon, Isaac and Rebekah would meet, and that meeting would change their lives forever. Isaac was a man with a clear purpose, to be faithful to God's promise. Since he was young, he had heard his father Abraham tell about how God called them to an unknown land and how he had promised to make their descendants a great nation. Isaac grew up knowing his life was no ordinary life. He was the child of the promise, the one who would continue the faith that God had planted in his family. But he was also human with doubts, hopes, and the need to find a companion who shared that faith and mission. Abraham knew that the time had come for his son to find a wife. He called his trusted servant, Eliezer, and sent him on an important mission: to find a wife for Isaac, a woman who would share the faith, values, and purpose that God had established for that family. "It won't be just any woman," said Abraham, his eyes shining with wisdom. "She will be the one God has prepared for Isaac." Eliezer knew that this mission was a great responsibility, but he also felt he was being guided by something greater. Eliezer set out with camels, valuable gifts, and a heart full of faith. As he crossed deserts and plains, his prayers were constant: "God of my master Abraham, guide me to the one who will be Isaac's wife." It was a long journey filled with uncertainties, but he knew God was leading him. Finally, he arrived at the city of Nahor, the land of Abraham's relatives. Stopping near a well, he prayed a simple, direct request: that the woman who would come to draw water and also offer it to his camels would be the one chosen by God for Isaac. At that moment, as if the heavens themselves answered, a young woman appeared. Her name was Rebekah. Rebekah was beautiful, but not just in appearance. Her beauty came from her generous and kind heart, from a faith that shone through her actions. When Eliezer asked for water, she not only gave him a drink but also ran to serve the camels, showing a generosity that touched Eliezer's heart. He knew in that instant that his prayers had been answered. He offered Rebekah gold gifts, saying, "The Lord has led me to you. You are the answer to my search." And upon hearing his mission, Rebekah did not hesitate. She knew that God was behind every detail, and her heart filled with courage to leave her home, her family, and go to a distant land where she would meet her future husband. The farewells were emotional, but Rebekah left determined. She was traveling to an unknown place, to a man she had never seen, but she felt in her heart that God was guiding her steps to something greater. Each day of the journey was a mix of expectation and trust as she prepared to start a new life. Isaac, on the other hand, continued his daily routine of prayer and work. He knew that his father had sent Eliezer to find a wife for him, but he did not know when this would happen. Many times he would look to the horizon, wondering how it would be the day he met the woman God had prepared for him. He trusted fully in God's plans, but felt the anticipation of someone waiting for something special. Then the day finally came. Isaac was walking through the fields as he did every day, when he saw a caravan approaching from afar. His heart raced. With each step, he knew he was closer to the moment that would change his life. Rebekah, upon seeing a man approaching, dismounted her camel and asked Eliezer, "Who is this man walking through the field to meet us?" Eliezer smiled and replied, "It is my master, Isaac." Rebekah immediately covered herself with a veil, as was the custom, preparing for the first meeting with her future husband. And there, in that field bathed by the setting sun, Isaac and Rebekah saw each other for the first time. Their eyes met, and at that moment, they both felt that all the waiting, the journey, and the uncertainties had been worth it. Isaac took Rebekah into his mother Sarah's tent, and there they began their life together. He loved her deeply, and she became for him a source of comfort, joy, and inspiration. At that meeting, they both realized that this was not just a marriage but the beginning of a story that God had written. A story built on love, faith, and the promise that God had planted in their lives. The early days of their life together were full of discoveries. Isaac and Rebekah were learning to know one another, to understand each other, and each moment was a step closer to becoming a true family. What united them most was the certainty that God had guided their paths to find each other, and that certainty was like an anchor for their hearts. In Isaac's tent, the nights were magical. They would spend hours talking, sharing dreams, hopes, and even fears. Rebekah talked about her life in her father's house, about how she grew up amidst her family's hospitality, always helping, always serving. "My mother always said that kindness opens doors that no gold could," she said, laughing. To her, serving others was an expression of love, and she did it with passion. Isaac listened to every word as if they were pearls, admiring how Rebekah spoke with such passion about everything she did. And he shared his own experiences about the responsibility of being the child of the promise, about the lessons of faith his father, Abraham, had taught him, and about the pain of losing his mother, Sarah. "Sometimes I walk through the fields and feel as if she is there," he confessed with a gentle smile. "But now I have you, and I feel that God is giving me new hope." Rebekah would touch his hand and smile. There was a silent understanding between the two, a connection that grew stronger each day. But life as a couple is not always easy. Over time, their personality differences began to show. Isaac was calm, inclined to meditation and prayer. He liked to spend long hours alone, reflecting on life and seeking divine guidance. Rebekah, however, was active, full of energy, and always involved in some task. She loved keeping the tent in order, cooking, organizing everything, so that their new home would be a comfortable and pleasant place for all. Isaac admired her energy, but sometimes felt overwhelmed by her fast-paced rhythm. "You need to rest, Rebekah," he would say gently. "I feel like you never stop." Rebekah would smile but reply kindly, "I like to always be doing something. Makes me feel alive." These differences, at first small, soon became a source of tension. While Isaac withdrew for moments of prayer, Rebekah felt that he was distancing himself from her. She wanted to share more of their daily life, to make plans to build their life side by side, but often felt that he was far away, immersed in his thoughts. "Don't you see that I need you here too, Isaac?" she sometimes asked, frustrated. Isaac, in turn, did not understand why Rebekah felt that way. He believed that his time with God was essential for their good as a couple, that his devotion was a way to ensure that they were always aligned with the divine will. But he did not realize that Rebekah also needed him to be present, involved in the day-to-day, in the small decisions and tasks that were part of building a life together. The arguments began small at first, but over time they became more intense. There was love between them, but there was also a need to learn how to balance their differences, to learn to yield, to understand that love is not just about being right but about being present. One night, when tensions were at their highest, a tear slipped from Rebekah's eye. "Isaac, I left everything to be here with you. I know God brought us together, but sometimes it feels like you don't want to be with me. Feels like you're always somewhere else." Isaac, surprised by the intensity of her words, felt the weight of his own shortcomings. He hugged her and with a voice full of emotion said, "Rebekah, I never wanted to make you feel that way. I know we need to find our way together. I promise to be more present, more attentive to what you need. I just want God to always be at the center of everything we do, and sometimes I get lost in that." Rebekah took a deep breath, feeling his tight embrace. She knew the journey wouldn't be easy, but it would be worth it. There, together, they realized they were learning about love, about commitment, and about how to build a life based on faith and companionship. God had brought them together for a purpose, and they were willing to face any challenge, as long as it was side by side. And in that moment, as the moonlight shone over the tent and the stars seemed to whisper silent blessings, Isaac and Rebekah found the strength to start anew, to keep building the promise God had given them. Because love, like faith, is something that grows every day with patience, dedication, and the certainty that together, they could face anything. Time passed, and Isaac and Rebekah continued to learn how to walk together. The love they had for each other grew stronger each day, but life always brings challenges, and their journey would be no different. It was a story of real love, full of faith but also of struggles and growth. Rebekah longed to have children, a desire that was part of her culture but, above all, an extension of the love she had for Isaac. The expectation of building a family that would continue God's promise was present from the day she agreed to leave her home. But time went by and Rebekah could not conceive. Year after year, she hoped and prayed, asking God to bless them with children. God's silence regarding this desire was deafening. Rebekah felt a growing emptiness, a sadness that often led her to isolation. She saw the pain in Isaac's eyes, although he rarely spoke about it. He was always patient, trying to console her with words of hope and faith. "God has a plan, Rebekah," he would say, gently caressing her face. "He has heard our prayers before, and he will hear them again. Let's trust." But even Isaac's words could not ease the anguish Rebekah felt. She questioned whether she was worthy of the promise, whether something in her life was preventing God from blessing them with children. "Am I not good enough, Isaac? Did God bring me here only for this promise not to be fulfilled?" These questions echoed in her mind and filled her heart with doubt. Isaac, always steadfast in his faith, kept hope alive. He remembered how God had been faithful to the promise made to Abraham, how against all odds, he had been born when his parents were too old to have children. "God does not forget his promises, Rebekah," he said. "You are part of it. You are the answer I waited for my entire life. I believe he will still give us what we desire." The two decided to intensify their prayers. Together, every night, they knelt and cried out to God for a child, for an answer. During the day, they worked side by side, helping to tend the herds, maintaining the home, and serving the community around them. Their union was stronger than ever, but sometimes Rebekah felt the weight of other women's silent gazes, of whispered comments she imagined were about her inability to conceive. And in those moments the pain would return, a pain she fought to hide from Isaac. One afternoon, while alone in the fields, Rebekah wept. She cried as she had never cried before, letting out all the pain, frustration, and fear. God, why did you bring me here? Why did you make me leave my home and family to live a promise that seems unfulfilled? She felt broken, and her words were a mix of prayer and lament, a sincere cry from someone who wanted to understand God's plan. It was then that she felt a subtle peace. Something changed in her spirit, a sense that she was not alone, that her prayer had been heard. It was not a direct answer, but it was a renewed hope, a reminder that God was working behind the scenes, even when she couldn't see. And she decided at that moment that she would keep believing, keep fighting. Meanwhile, Isaac was also waging his own silent battle. He did not want to let it show to Rebekah, but he felt the weight of being the child of the promise, of being the one through whom Abraham's descendants were to prosper. He did not just desire a child. He felt that a child was part of God's purpose for their lives. Sometimes, he would retreat to the field at dusk, alone, and cry out to God fervently, asking for direction, for an answer. Then one day everything changed. Rebekah began to notice something different. One morning she woke up with a strange feeling. Not of sickness, but something different, something she had never felt before. She did not want to get her hopes up, for she had faced so many disappointments before. But as the days went by, the feeling intensified. She found herself more tired, more sensitive, and a new glow seemed to light up her face. Finally, she gathered the courage and shared with Isaac, I think I am expecting a child." The words left her lips cautiously, but hope was written in her eyes. Isaac was silent for a moment, trying to comprehend what he was hearing. When reality settled in, his face lit up with joy, and he embraced Rebekah tightly. "God has heard our prayers," he said, his voice full of emotion. "He is faithful, Rebekah. He is faithful." Rebekah's pregnancy was a mixture of joy and anxiety. They were grateful to God for this blessing but also feared complications. Rebekah had a challenging pregnancy, with intense pains, and she often felt as if there was a battle happening inside her. She did not know she was carrying twins, but she felt that something special was happening. "Why do I feel as if there is a war within me?" she asked Isaac, concerned. And together, they sought God for the answer to what was to come. It was then that, in a moment of deep prayer, Rebekah received a revelation. God told her she was carrying 2 boys, and that they would be leaders of 2 different nations. "2 nations are in your womb," God spoke to her heart. "2 peoples will be separated from your body. One will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." This revelation brought relief and expectation. Isaac and Rebekah understood that what they were experiencing was part of God's greater plan, and it gave them the strength to keep believing, even amid the challenges of pregnancy. They were ready to embrace what God had prepared for their lives. And finally, the great day came. Rebekah gave birth to 2 sons, Esau the older and Jacob the younger. The brothers were born as different as could be. Esau, strong with reddish skin and covered in hair, was a natural hunter, a man of instinct and strength. Jacob, on the other hand, was calm, with a thoughtful and introspective spirit. From the beginning, Their differences were clear, and Rebekah and Isaac realized they were witnessing something unique, something that would indeed change the course of their family's history. Their lives changed completely. Now, beyond being husband and wife, Isaac and Rebekah were parents, responsible for raising these two boys who would grow up to become leaders of great nations. The love they had for each other was multiplied in love for their children, and they dedicated themselves to teaching them both about faith, God's promise, and the purpose for their lives. Rebekah finally understood why she had been guided to leave her home, her family, and her past. She had been chosen for something grand, to be part of God's story, to be the mother of two boys who would continue the promise made to Abraham. And alongside Isaac, she saw that true love, when sustained by faith, is capable of overcoming any challenge, of withstanding any storm, and of finding beauty even in the most difficult moments. Isaac and Rebekah's family prospered. Their days were filled with laughter, hard work, and constant prayers. Challenges would always exist. After all, life is never free of difficulties. But now they knew that together they were stronger. They learned that love requires sacrifice, patience, and unwavering trust in God's plans. And above all, they understood that when God unites two lives, it is to build something eternal, something that echoes beyond the present. And so the story of Isaac and Rebekah, marked by challenges, faith, and the meeting of their souls, continued to inspire generations, showing that true love is more than emotion. It is a commitment to something greater, an act of trusting and persevering, knowing that God always fulfills His promises. The arrival of Esau and Jacob marked the beginning of a new phase for Isaac and Rebekah. From that moment on, their home became a vibrant, lively place, full of activities, laughter, and challenges. Isaac and Rebekah were happy and fulfilled as parents, but they quickly realized that raising two children so different would require patience, wisdom, and a love that needed to be balanced for each of the boys. Esau grew quickly and strong. From a young age, he had the energy of the fields and loved to spend time hunting, exploring, always in touch with nature. He was an impulsive young man, passionate about the outdoors, freedom, and physical strength that he demonstrated so well. Jacob, on the other hand, had a calm and introspective personality. He preferred the comfort of the tent, where he would spend hours learning, observing, and developing a sense of strategy and reflection. Isaac, with his serene and contemplative spirit, felt closer to Esau, admiring his strength and energy. Rebekah, however, identified with Jacob, recognizing in him a keen intelligence and a sensitive heart. It was a delicate balance. Isaac's devotion to Esau did not go unnoticed by Jacob, and Rebekah's preference for Jacob was also clear to Esau. Although the parents tried to maintain a fair balance in their love and attention, the natural dynamics of the sons' personalities caused tension between the brothers, a rivalry that began to form silently. As the boys grew, Isaac and Rebekah continued their mission of teaching them about God, about the promise made to Abraham, and about the purpose they carried as God's chosen family. They worked hard to plant in their hearts the value of faith, generosity, and the importance of being in tune with God's will. But despite all the love and care, family challenges were inevitable. One afternoon, Esau returned from a long hunting journey, exhausted and starving. When he reached the tent, he found Jacob cooking a red and fragrant stew. The smell of the food made him even more impatient, and he asked Jacob, "Please give me some of that stew, for I am about to die of hunger." Jacob's response was unexpected but full of strategy. I will give it to you, but in exchange for your birthright. To Esau at that moment, nothing seemed more important than satisfying his hunger. He did not think about the long-term consequences, did not reflect on the meaning of the birthright, the blessing of being the firstborn, the right to leadership and inheritance that came with it. What good is the birthright to me if I am going to die of hunger now? He replied impulsively. And so he swore to Jacob, selling him his birthright for a simple bowl of food. When Rebekah learned of what had happened, she was concerned but also saw an opportunity. She knew of the prophecy that the older would serve the younger, and saw Jacob's act as part of God's plan coming to fruition. However, the fact that Esau had despised the blessing of the birthright would not be a decision without consequences. It was just a spark of tension that would grow over the years. Isaac, aged and with failing vision, began to feel that his life was nearing its end. He knew it was time to grant the blessing of the birthright, an act that would pass on the divine promise and inheritance given by God to Abraham. His plan was to bless Esau, his favored son. However, Rebekah, upon hearing about Isaac's plan, could not allow this to happen, for she believed that Jacob was the one chosen by God to continue the promise. So, in an act of cunning and courage, Rebekah helped Jacob disguise himself as Esau. She prepared the food that Isaac loved, put animal skins on Jacob's arms so he would seem hairy like Esau, and instructed him to go into his father's tent and receive the blessing. Rebekah's heart raced as she watched her son enter the tent. She knew she was risking everything: her relationship with Esau, her husband's trust, but she believed she was doing what was right in God's eyes. When Jacob approached Isaac, the father touched him, felt the hairy skin of his arms, smelled his clothes, and convinced it was Esau, granted him the blessing. Isaac blessed Jacob with the holiest words, giving him prosperity, leadership, and the continuation of the promise God had made to Abraham. And it was only after Esau arrived, too late to receive the blessing, that Isaac realized the deception. Esau's cry of anguish echoed throughout the tent. "Father, bless me too." He pleaded, but it was too late. The blessing once given could not be taken back, and Esau, in his fury and bitterness, swore that one day he would kill Jacob for stealing his blessing. Rebekah, upon hearing the threat, acted quickly to protect her son. She sent Jacob to her brother Laban's house in Haran, instructing him to stay there until Esau's anger subsided. Jacob's departure was painful for Rebekah. She knew she was doing what was necessary to protect her son, but she also knew she might never see him again. The tension in her family had reached its peak, and the cost of her decision would weigh on her forever. Isaac, though shocked by what had happened, recognized that somehow the events had unfolded according to God's divine plan. He trusted that God was working in all of it, even when the circumstances were confusing and painful. In the years that followed, Isaac and Rebekah continued to live with the hope that their sons, even separated by a great distance, would reconcile. Rebekah prayed every day that Esau would forgive Jacob and that Jacob would find his way back home. It was a constant prayer, an unshakable faith in a better future for their family. And so the seasons passed, and time brought maturity and reflection. Esau over the years found peace for his soul. He married, built his own family, and prospered. Jacob, in turn, also built his life in Haran, marrying, having children, and growing as a man of faith and wisdom. Both brothers walked their own paths but carried with them the memory of their roots and God's promise. Finally, there came a day when Jacob decided to return home. He was tired of running, tired of living far from his land and family. With fear but determination, he prayed to God and asked for forgiveness for all the mistakes of the past. He knew that meeting Esau would be a decisive moment, an opportunity for redemption and reconciliation. And God answered his prayer with grace. When Jacob and Esau finally met, the embrace they shared was one of reconciliation. Esau, upon seeing his brother after so many years, ran to him, and the two cried together. The hurts of the past were left behind, and forgiveness shone like a new beginning for both. Rebekah, from wherever she was, would have rejoiced. Her heart, which had so long yearned for this reconciliation, would have finally found peace. Isaac, who had witnessed the separation of his sons, was able to see God's promise being fulfilled in a way he had never imagined. Isaac and Rebekah's story is a story of faith, challenges, and a promise that overcomes all adversities. They learned that true love is not perfect but perseverant, that faith is not always understandable but unshakable, and that when God is in control, even the greatest pains can turn into great blessings. The lineage of Isaac and Rebekah continued, giving rise to an entire nation, fulfilling the promise that God had made to Abraham. And their story echoes to this day, reminding us that God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Their challenges and struggles are part of a journey of growth and learning, a journey that inspires us to keep believing in the power of love and God's faithfulness. And so, forever intertwined in the history of humanity, Isaac and Rebekah left a legacy that shines with hope, redemption, and the certainty that God never abandons those who trust in Him.